And welcome to another episode of Me, You, and Jeju. I'm Darryl. With me, Alexis. How you doing?
Hey-oh, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. How have you been over the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, busy. Life has been busy, but really, say it again, really enjoying the weather.
Yeah.
What about in South Side? Is it good?
It's nice and balmy and beautiful and hot and sweaty and gross and lovely. It's the way I like it.
I don't like any of that, but have you been getting the really cool nights we have up north?
No, I actually haven't noticed that. Maybe doubtful. I don't think so. But
It's been so nice. It's like windows wide open nights, aircon off. It's been good.
Yeah, that sounds like the way I want to live. We've been trying to enjoy it. We've gone camping a couple times.
Yeah, did you go glamping or camping?
Last weekend we went camping. Proper. Okay. But, man, I don't know what it is about camping in Jeju. Like, we always have the worst experiences. The worst experiences camping. Like, we went to, what beach was it? Gwakji, over by Halim. Close to Halim.
Yeah, and that's where I like to camp.
So we were there for the weekend, and at like 4 o'clock in the morning, you hear the road construction because everything is right by the road. You can't get away from it. So my wife, Hyun Jeong, Lim Hyun Jeong, she had to go sleep in the car.
Oh, man.
She can't take it. She could not take it. And then at 5:30 in the morning, the local community center guys, all of these ajishis come up with their lawnmowers and weed whackers around the tents at 5:30 in the morning.
You just... Honestly, there's just no winning. Or I've been watching the construction at all the beaches. Every single beach has some sort of construction going on. And you just would think that perhaps this could have been taken care of at the beginning of spring, not when beach season is officially here. So I'm always just like, why? What is the thinking behind this? Yeah, but you just have bad luck. You got to keep trying. You know what you should do? Head into the hills. You know, get yourself a nice little river spot. Try that out.
We're gonna go up next time is what we're thinking.
Exactly.
We're gonna go up.
Find a cool stream, a nice little place. You'll be happier there.
Yeah, because I grew up camping. Did you grow up camping?
No, actually, I'm not even once.
Not even once, right?
Not even once. I actually thought about that. So when I moved to Colorado, all my friends camped, and I was so intimidated by it. I never wanted to do it. I was like, nah, I'll just go home. Not until I came to Jeju did I really, really embrace the camping lifestyle because I just didn't know any better. And now that I know how simple it can be and how fun, I regret all my past that I didn't take more advantage of it. So.
Well, camping here is definitely not the same as camping back because you're so close together. The space isn't the premium. You buy your firewood in cardboard boxes from E-Mart.
You don't just go pick it.
Yeah, and they come with gloves.
I scour the beaches. Well, I think the worst thing about this, I don't want to be negative Nancy right off the bat, but the worst thing about camping this summer is specifically how not only is it now more popular in Korea, but then we have all the mainlanders coming down because they can't travel anywhere else.
Right.
And so the past 2 years, it's gotten more crowded, and there's no secret places anymore. But especially this summer, already the beach isn't even officially open yet, and they're packed, and the campgrounds are absolutely lined. There's not even a spot to grab a space anymore.
Exactly that. I remember I had last summer. Last summer I had put up my tent on a place. I'm like, okay, I'm going to put my fire pit right in front of it. We'll go to the beach, come back, tent right there, beside us.
Well, and I also think there's something about Korean culture as well that I think camping is new here. And just, like we're going to be talking about surfing later on in the in the podcast. And surfing has rules. Camping has rules too. But it's such these are unspoken rules, but it's such a new experience here that it hasn't necessarily, it hasn't gotten fleshed out yet.
Those rules haven't coalesced.
Yeah, my friends went, anyways, it's too long of a story, but it was like one of those stories you're like, really? Did they really put their tent right there? But yeah, there was like, we're talking about like in this massive area, the tent went right in a space that it shouldn't have gone in, empty area. And you're just like, oh my gosh. But maybe with time,
Hopefully it'll get better. And so next time we go camping, we're going to go to the hills and I'll tell you all about it. Possibly some ajishis with weed whackers will be there too. Who knows?
We'll see, but my fingers are crossed that you have a good experience because it's, yeah.
So what I wanted to ask you for today's podcast is when I say to you, Jeju, island of world peace, what comes to mind?
Oh gosh, that's well, first of all, I think it's super interesting. Mainly because, and I don't want to dive too much into this, but mainly because, the military just built a base here. And I don't necessarily equate military and world peace in the same sentence, in the same idea.
Right.
So I think that's interesting, but I'm also knowledgeable. I do know that we have world peace forums here. And I've heard that. I've never gone. I've never gotten that special invite, but I hear that they're quite popular. So I have mixed feelings.
Do you know where the term comes from?
Oh gosh, is this going to be like one of the Hawaii of Asia?
No.
No, I have no idea where world. I just assumed the Jeju government made it up.
No, well, I mean, someone must have, but there's actually a lot in that term, right? So now, before we continue, I must admit that I used to be really torn about this term, right? Jeju, Island of World Peace. And since moving back here a couple of years ago, I was commissioned by the Jeju Peace Institute to write an article about it for them. And this was a while ago. And, I said it's an island of peace in name only. That was kind of the thesis I had. And now that I look back on it, I feel like I was a little glib. Maybe, it's not necessarily fair to say that. Like I said, it was an island of peace in name only. And if it wants to be a beacon of peace abroad, it needs to be that at home. And it needs to resolve issues like 4-3, development issues, and so forth. But I don't agree with that because there's a lot compact in those 4 words. And do you know, so do you remember 1991?
In general?
In general. How
kind of
were you a child?
What?
You were a child, I believe?
No, I wasn't a child.
No?
Yes, sure. Let's just let the world think that I was a child. Yes, I was a child. I was really young. I must have been 7 years old. Keep going.
I was 9. Jurassic Park was I was 9. Jurassic Park was still 2 more years from coming out. Ghostbusters 2 was 2 years removed from release. But the Cold War was still ongoing, right? I don't remember the Cold War very well.
I do, because I'm American, and it was a big deal.
Yeah. But amid the Cold War, there was, at that time, it was nearing the end. And USSR President Gorbachev and Korean President Roh Tae-woo held a summit at the Sheila Hotel in Jungmun on April 20th, 1991.
No kidding. 1991. Okay. Wow.
Jeju was christened Island of World Peace January 27th, 2005.
Because of that meeting.
Yeah, essentially. But there's more to it than that. This is even before Jeju became a province that it got this title. And it has to do with the fact that that summit happened here. But also, the gravity of that summit was, afterwards, Roh said that summit was the greatest achievement of his presidency.
Wow, that's big words. Okay.
And so I went back and looked at newspapers about this, old newspapers, and it was the first summit time that it was the first relationship between Russia and Korea in 85 years.
Wow.
Before the Japanese occupied, right? And so you have, and they're an enemy, an adversary at the very least, country.
Sure.
And it was the first time they met together, and it meant also to the people in Korea the potential for reunification, because at that same time, Germany was reunifying or about to.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So they saw this
big
summit.
Deal.
Huge deal. Huge deal. So all the stuff that was wrapped in this term was the fact that maybe we can have reunification from this meeting.
Yeah.
That, like, do you remember, like, 2 years ago during your president, Trump, and Kim Jong-un were supposed to...
Say your president. Don't make me start turning away viewers.
Yeah, no, getting mad at me.
But I do remember when that man visited here. Yes, I remember.
Well, no, Trump, they had the summit with Kim Jong-un, right? In Hanoi. They were thinking of doing it here on Jeju.
Yeah, now it sounds, yes. I thought you meant when he was going up to the DMZ. Right. Yes, I remember when he was thinking, I remember that, because everyone's like, no way.
Yeah, and that's because of this idea of Jeju being this place where summits of peace happen, because also, you know, Bill Clinton came here, and then you had one of the Chinese presidents, which has only been like 2, so I don't know why I can't remember, and also Japan came here. Right. So
there's been quite a few heads of states, heads of countries, and along with a smattering of famous actors and such as well, if I recall correctly. Didn't Henry? I'm horrible with names. I was gonna say something cool. I was gonna be like one of the ones with the facts, you know, but never mind.
But that meeting was the first of like 2 or 3 to come, between 3 with Russia, and each time it was like, Rose said the Cold War ice of the Korean Peninsula has now begun to crack because of these meetings, right?
That's interesting.
And so the reason, like, and that's why when they talk about Island of World Peace, they always talk about reunification, because they felt, or Koreans at least felt like that was what was possible from these meetings with Russia, which I thought, I didn't even realize, like, I knew these things, but it's hard, it's different between knowing and knowing.
Right. Well, now I see why you're saying you felt a little glib. I could see, I mean, that seems a little bit more, those meetings seem a little bit more interesting than what has happened in the last few years. So. Right. Yeah.
But those things that happened in the last few years, like, it's not just a designation, it's a law that got passed. And underneath that law, Jeju has to do things to create relationships with North Korea. Jeju has to do things to pursue peace, in which that Jeju Peace Institute I talked about was founded because of that.
Yeah. Do you know that I just heard about that? Someone was trying to join one of the groups I run on Facebook. And so we ended up talking, and hopefully we can even have him on the podcast, but he is a visiting scholar there for the summer. I had never even heard of the Peace Institute. Do you know when that was made?
Not off the top of my head.
Have you been there?
Yeah. I've been there. It's not that far from here. It's down near Jungmun, and it's also the location of UNITAR, which is the UN International Training Center, which is where they train. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Right.
Okay.
They train. They train governments and government officials and reporters and.
That's fascinating.
From developing countries and how to live up to the UN standards to increase their own standards of.
Fascinating. Guarantee you a lot of people did not know that. That's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot to this, more than just the title, right? Mm-hmm. And then it brought us the Jeju Forum, which starts today, which, I mean, you can...
Oh, it starts today.
It starts today, which is why I was talking about about this today, because Gorbachev is back on the island.
No, you're kidding me.
Yeah, Gorbachev is back on the island.
Why? I truly don't know how you... Oh, you went to the summit.
No, I went to the summit today. No, it's at the Hivichi Hotel, which it used to be in Jungmun, and then a couple years ago they moved it to the... Over? Yeah, the Hivichi Hotel for bigger, nicer.
No idea that he was here. That's truly fascinating.
Yeah, and he's here for this peace forum because this year marks the 30th anniversary of that summit.
I'm going to head down to Pyosa and see if I can get myself a handshake.
I'd like to see you try. I'd like to see you try.
Guessing there's going to be an extra security at that beach, but we'll see.
Well, Ban Ki-moon is here for it. Well, I mean, Oh, it is, some of it's virtual, so who knows actually who's going to be here or
Right,
not.
who's here, who's not, yeah.
Yeah. But like the former prime ministers of Australia is here. A lot of big names are here. I used to cover this every year, and it's amazing the names of people.
Oh, agreed. Which is why I was trying to be cool and remember even actors and because like there's been some famous actors that are activists that were invited here as well. So yeah. Interesting. Okay.
So well, to talk more about this, let's throw to our
special guest,
Tommy Tran, to talk more about the designation of Jeju, Island of World Peace. And now with us to speak more about the Island of World Peace is Tommy Tran, a lecturer at the University of California Merced. Thank you so much for being back with us today.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me back.
We love having you on the show. It's great to have you back. We should have a nickname for him, don't you think? The Master of History.
The Master of Policy?
Yeah, I'll think of something, and that's going to be his new nickname whenever he's on.
So, and we were just talking about the Island of World Peace designation and all that comes with that and the history of it. Now, there's a lot to it. So I was curious, what did you think of the Island of World Peace as a program, as an initiative? And do you think it's a success, or has it been the opposite of a success?
Honestly, I'm really ambivalent about it. There's good things about it because it does allow people to publicly recognize the history of Jeju Island and the reason why it has this designation in the first place. And on the other hand, it's also kind of seems more like a publicity stunt on the part of the Jeju government and also the tourism organizations on Jeju Island.
Right.
So I really have really mixed feelings about the notion of Island of World Peace. And whether it's a failure or success, it's really hard to say because there are forums on Jeju. There are meetings that are happening on Jeju. Yeah. And there are these conversations like the Jeju Forum or invitations to activists from Okinawa and Taiwan. And ironically, those conferences that are happening with activists are ironically outside of the governmental level. So it's like the Gangjeong activists, so that very controversial issue involving the naval base. Ironically, that brought peace activists from Taiwan and Okinawa to Jeju.
And I remember during the Jeju Forum when that happened, they actually kind of forced their way into the forum, not physically, but like because of their presence on the island and because of the attention it got, they actually got like some space within the forum itself to discuss their issues, which actually wasn't, I don't believe was really planned at that time. So that's a really interesting. Yeah, but like for instance with the Jeju Forum, it's such high profile people. It kind of excludes the grassroots kind of organizations. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, it's mostly politicians that already are prominent on the world stage, or individuals that already have a name behind them. So it seems increasingly divorced from the whole reason why Jeju was designated a quote unquote island of world peace to begin with. And that of course is, that if you recall, that goes back to the No Mu-hyun administration when he first admitted that the South Korean government did commit atrocities on Jeju Island in the April 3rd event.
Yeah, it's done a lot of, in a way, of like recognition for parts of Korea's history, and I'm not ambivalent, but I understand what you're saying. Like I kind of see the both aspects to it because a lot of good has come from it, but also at the same time, it's also been used for MICE industry, which is like meetings, incentives, conventions, and exhibitions to bring more tourist dollars to Jeju. Now, in the future, how would you like to see the island properly use the designation?
Well, there really is a potential to bring these various traumatic histories together, to actually have these forums to talk about them, to have them operate at the grassroots level, and a lot of this has been happening outside of the governmental level. So ironically, it has been successful in that regard, and not because of the designation, but in spite of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. It almost seems that way. Now, the Jeju Forum starts today. And those grassroots, from my knowledge, I don't believe we're having those conversations about the airport, for instance, which is the new Gangjeong thing, Gangjeong version of that protest. The same people are involved in it. Yet, what we're talking about at these forums are larger issues that aren't really Jeju focus. Now, that's Alexis. Did I interrupt you? Were you about to say something?
No. I think that's. I don't know a lot about this subject, so it's always interesting to listen to you talk. But on one hand, it not being just about Jeju is not a bad thing, right? Yeah. Like, really it is saying the island of world peace. So that's nice on one hand. On the other hand, I'm with Tommy that the grassroots really should be having the voice. I know Bill Clinton was here for this forum, right?
Yep,
so that's not really when you think about American policies and things like that. We're not talking about world peace so much. So there's been a lot of famous people. It would be nice, like you said, Tommy, to see some grassroots come up and really have an influence in this big, massive forum, because it is a very famous one at this point, right?
Yeah.
That is really interesting, because you had talking about like there's those elements of Jeju. One part of elements of Jeju is that it desires very much to be famous, very much to be well known, and it wants this famous to be the what is it? The Davos of Asia, right? The Davos of peace, or whatever they call it as. And on the other side, there's actually really great conversations that are go on there.
Right.
So maybe this is just kind of the good with the bad, so to speak.
Yeah, the ebb and the flow, right? Like this year, that year, this year, that year, see what happens.
Well, great. Thank you, Tommy. Thank you so much for taking the time just to come on our show to drop that knowledge and your insight into these things. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime.
Hopefully we'll have you back on when you come to the final conclusion on how the Hawaii of Korea has started.
Yes, I actually found more documents. There'll be much more to talk about.
Yes, we will definitely be having you back on so we can piece through that.
Yeah, I'm scheduling you right now for the next episode. Thanks very much, Tommy.
Tommy, you're just gonna be a regular, and I'm gonna working on that nickname. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
And thank you very much again, Tommy, for being on. It's always a pleasure having him. It's always so interesting to have him.
So interesting. The man is just a wealth of knowledge. I love that right now he's updating his Facebook constantly with I love this. He's updating constantly with he's here in Korea specifically to research more about the Korean history. But while he's at it on Jeju, he's hitting all the libraries and et cetera, and he's trying to dig down deep into the governor at the time and why Jeju is called the Hawaii of Asia. And he started to get like deeper and deeper. So we're gonna have to have him back and talk about that.
That's what you mentioned. I was confused. I was like, when you mentioned it to him, I'm like, at the end of I'm like, didn't we do that? He's here in Korea specifically, and he's in between Jeju and the mainland, and he's hitting up the special libraries and just is digging and just trying to find more research. And one of the things that he's doing whilst looking for his own, work, he's uncovering clues to where Hawaii of Korea came from. So. Oh, that's interesting.
Eventually, maybe he'll have an answer, or maybe he won't. But his process has been really interesting. I'm loving it.
Oh, so he's updating you on Facebook.
Well, he's updating his Facebook, yeah. And every time he does it, I'm like, all right, one more piece of the clue. It's really cool, yeah.
It's such an odd niche thing, but I love it. I want to know exactly everything I can about that.
Yep. And he's the man to find out, yeah.
Well, you know what time it is?
Interview time.
No.
Oh, Jeju Dialect time.
It's time for Jeju Dialect, brought to you by GS25 in Jungmoon. When in Jungmoon, hit up the Uchiguk. No, not the Uchiguk. Hit up the GS25 across the street from the Uchiguk. Get all your victuals and libations and all your other good stuff there. Now,
tasty beers.
Tasty beers, especially in the summer heat.
We're dorks.
Let's go. Now, it's time for our hugely popular segment of Jeju Dialect Corner, brought to you by GS25 in Jungmoon, with our teacher, Sansung Lim Hyun Jeong. Thank you so much for being with us again.
Always thank you.
잘 잊어주강.
Oh.
Hey,
You
now
taught
she's
us that
showing off. I
before.
love it.
Really?
What does that mean? What does that one mean?
Oh, I don't know. Like, have you been well? Something like that.
Nice. I
That's a
like
really good
that.
one.
Okay.
So now, before we get to today's lesson, I thought I would like to say I've been actually quite surprised by how much I've been using the language and the words we use actually in this class. And so on the weekend, I was going up to people and saying like "Mengshime kapsa" on the way out the door, and I was very proud. I was like wearing, a very pleasant of a person I was, which is not always the case. And then Hyun Jeong heard me say that to a shopkeeper on the way out, and she was like, "Oh, you're doing that wrong." How was I doing it wrong?
I know, like, even I do remember that we learned that expression like last time. And I don't know why I didn't notice at the time. It was wrong. So, like, we were learning, I think, take care last time. And if you want to say to somebody to take care, then you should say 맹심합서. Just 맹심합서. No, you don't say 맹심행 갑서. Because like, 가다 means to go. So you say like somebody leaving, and then you can say to the person who's leaving, that you can say 맹심행 갑서.
Right. So I was saying to the shopkeeper as if they were leaving, and I was the one leaving.
Yeah.
Nobody seemed to notice.
But nobody was bothered, right?
Because
No, they were very happy.
love it.
they were
I
just
love
like impressed that you're just saying like 맹심, right?
Yeah, which
맹심 is like Jeju dialect.
is also
Yeah.
Jeju dialect. So that's really interesting. So
That's really reassuring to our listeners that they can go make mistakes and they're probably still going to get a good reaction from everybody.
and they'll leave like me. I was like the cock of the walk. I was leaving the stores like, look at me. I speak Jeju Satori. And she's like,
I
Daryl.
like it.
Pop that ego right there. So what are we learning today?
So this week, I think we should learn, like, because I taught you guys like wrong Jeju dialect. So like, I'm sorry. So so we will learn like I'm sorry in Jeju dialect today.
Nice.
And
Okay.
We say like 미안합니다 in Korean, and in Jeju dialect, 미안하오다.
미안하다.
Mianhoda.
미안하오다.
Mianhauda.
Howda. 미안하다.
Say it one more time.
미안하오다.
Mianhauda.
I like that.
Okay.
That's the shortest and the easiest one so far. This is going to be like a winner for me.
And so it doesn't matter if I'm coming or going. I just have to say Mianhauda, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay,
All right.
one more time, Alexis.
미안하다.
Mianhauda.
미안하오다. I was
I'm going to
wrong
be getting a
last
lot
time.
out of this one, I think.
Me too. Me too. So that's been another corner of Jeju dialect with me, you, and Jeju. And until next time.
Thank you, teacher.
Thank you. 메이싱해 갑사.
잘 있습사양.
Ooh, nice.
Alexis, do you have you used any of these words out in the wild as I embarrassingly have?
No, I love your story, by the way, because if anything, it just makes me feel like I can be a little bit more confident. Honestly, I haven't. I'm so ashamed of my pronunciation, and maybe I should just get over myself. But I'm always so worried about how I say things and how it comes out of my mouth. So I haven't been using. But the I'm sorry seems easy enough for me to do it. I think what I need is like to write it all on my phone and be able to pull it up and look at it while saying it a couple times.
Yeah, I guess the moral of my story is I was incorrect.
Just do it.
And nobody cared. Just do it.
And they were
nobody
happy
cared.
with you, right?
Super happy. Like
See, that's cool.
It endears you to the local Koreans, and they remember you is another thing.
I will say for those of us, our listeners that are on the island, I do think the South Side is a little bit more older culture than the North Side. I think the North has changed the restaurants, the businesses, and I don't think in the North you're really gonna. Well, I don't want to I don't know. There's always restaurants and places that are owned by the old Jeju people, but I think a lot of times nowadays it's the transplants from the mainland that have the northern area. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense. You know, I'm gonna tell us a quick story about my mother-in-law then that explains it perfectly. You know, she doesn't drive.
Oh, okay. Because okay.
No, you task her like, why didn't you learn to drive? And she goes, oh. Another thing I have to do, right? Like that was her reaction.
I like her already.
But I just asked my wife the other day, like, when was the last time she went to Jeju-shi?
Oh,
never. Why? Why does she have to? All her friends are here. Yep. Everything is in Jungmoon.
100%. So, this doesn't surprise me.
And she speaks Jeju Satori, which is to your point. Go to the villages.
Exactly. The north, right in the city. I mean, you know, like I said, for the listeners, go ahead and try it because you can't make assumptions about where somebody's from or what they know or don't know. I just think, you know, the markets, the smaller supermarkets, things like that, the 5-day markets, that's where you're really going to have a chance. And then if you live south side, definitely be trying it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I feel a little emboldened after hearing your story. So maybe in a month you can ask me that question again and see if I've had any progress.
You know, I'm going to ask you in 2 weeks. weeks.
Whoa. Don't be trying to put the pressure on.
And that's been another episode of Me, You, and Jeju. Thank you so much for listening. Now, if you have a moment, please take it and hit that subscribe button or like or share or do any of the other internet mumbo jumbo that we ask you to do, which is all really helpful and gets us more listeners and creates a larger community, which is why we started this in the first place. Now on Instagram, for instance, we have tons of interesting content, at least I think it's interesting, about Jeju facts and figures and pictures. And also we're putting all of our lessons there that we're doing with Sunsing Lim Hyun Jeong. So there you can see the English spelling, the Korean spelling, and also listen to the pronunciation and be able to look at the phonetics of it. So that's really useful for trying to use these terms in the wild. Now, music for this episode has been by Jason Lisko, art, Sarah Hodgkiss. I'm Darryl Coote, and my co-host, as you all know, is Alexis Joy. Now, to continue with our endeavor to try to promote local Jeju-based music and musicians, we have the music styles of Kamen Ross to end this episode. Now, Ross, who moved to Korea from America early last year, has primarily performed as the front of prog rock outfits and experimental groups. And for those who are like me and didn't realize until very recently, as in looking up to know what prog rock is, prog rock stands for progressive rock and not rock, from the Czech city of Prague. But I digress. Kamen Ross has recently completed a new solo piano instrumental album. The song we're going to be playing now is called Very Distant Starlight from that Jeju-inspired piano album, I Dreamt We Fell in Love. The album will be available everywhere where digital music is found September 9th. Until then, subscribe to Kamen Ross's YouTube channel. Kamen Ross's first signal from the new album will be available July 7th. And until then, here is Very Distant Starlight.